Welcome back, beautiful souls. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found this message today, and to those who've been on this journey with us, thank you for being here again. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to say a heartfelt thank you to everyone who has sent super thanks recently. Your generosity doesn't just support this channel, it's a vote of confidence that these messages matter, that they're reaching hearts, and that God is using them in real ways. If you feel led to support through super thanks today, I receive it with gratitude, but there's absolutely no pressure. Your presence here is enough. Now, let me share something with you that might shift how you see your current season of waiting. There's a study from the University of Texas that found something fascinating. When people meet someone they consider truly exceptional, someone who aligns with their deepest values and genuine connection needs, they often stop actively pursuing other romantic options, even before a relationship is officially established. Not because they're playing games or trying to manufacture scarcity, but because genuine interest creates a natural focus. When someone encounters a person who resonates with their spirit, who reflects the character they've been praying for, their attention shifts. Other people start to feel like distractions rather than possibilities. And here's what I want you to understand today. While you've been wondering if anyone sees you, if anyone values what you bring, if anyone is looking for exactly what you offer, there may be someone who has already stopped looking elsewhere, because they've already found what they didn't even know they were searching for in you. This isn't about ego or fantasies. This is about recognizing that the qualities you're cultivating in this season, the character you're building, the healing you're walking through, these things create a fragrance that the right person notices. Proverbs 31:10 asks, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies." The same principle applies to men of godly character. Rarity creates recognition. When someone encounters genuine character in a world full of pretense, they don't take it lightly. Today, we're going to walk through 9 specific ways someone who is truly meant for you might be demonstrating patience and focus, even while you're unaware. These aren't fairy tales. These are patterns I've seen repeatedly in healthy, God-honoring relationships that actually lasted. But let me be clear from the start. This message applies to healthy, mutual, God-honoring connections where both people are emotionally mature and seeking His will. This is not about someone obsessing over you, refusing to accept a lack of interest, or engaging in manipulative behavior. God's design for relationships includes freedom, respect, and mutual honor. If you're ever unsure whether someone's interest in you is healthy or concerning, seek wisdom from God and trusted, mature counsel. What we're discussing today is beautiful, but it requires discernment. So let's dive into these 9 signs. Grab your journal, open your heart, and let's see what God wants to reveal to you today. Number 1, they've stopped entertaining shallow connections because they've tasted something real there. There's something that happens when a person encounters genuine depth in another human being. It's like tasting fresh water after years of drinking from murky streams. Suddenly, everything else feels empty by comparison. If someone has genuinely connected with who you are, not just your appearance or your availability, but your character, your heart, your spirit, they may find themselves unable to settle for surface-level interactions anymore. Let me paint you a picture of what this might look like. Imagine a man who's been casually dating, going through the motions, swiping through apps, meeting people for coffee, having pleasant but ultimately forgettable conversations. Then he meets you, maybe at church, maybe through mutual friends, maybe in a community group, and the conversation goes somewhere different. You talk about your journey with God, about the dreams He's placed in your heart, about the struggles that have shaped you. You're not performing or trying to impress. You're just being authentically you, and something shifts in him. The next time someone tries to set him up or he gets a notification from a dating app, there's a new feeling, disinterest, not because those other people aren't lovely in their own right, but because he's glimpsed something in you that feels like home, and everything else feels like a detour. This is what Philippians 4:8 is getting at when it tells us, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things." When someone encounters these qualities genuinely expressed in another person, their mind naturally returns there. They think on those things because those things reflect what they've been praying for. Here's what's beautiful about this. You're not trying to make this happen. You're not manipulating or strategizing. You're simply being who God is shaping you to be. And that authenticity is magnetic to the right person. The woman who's been growing in her prayer life, learning to set healthy boundaries, doing the inner work to heal from past hurts. She carries a presence that a mature man notices. He sees that she's not desperate for attention or validation. He sees that she has a source of strength beyond human relationships. And if he's the right man, that doesn't intimidate him, it draws him. Or consider a woman who spent years dating men who were emotionally unavailable, always charming, but never truly present. Then she encounters a man who actually listens, who asks thoughtful questions, who remembers what matters to her, who shows up consistently without fanfare or drama. She might find that other men who try to pursue her suddenly feel exhausting. She's tasted consistency, and chaos no longer appeals to her. Now let's talk about what the unhealthy version of this looks like. Because discernment matters. The unhealthy version is someone who becomes fixated on you to the point of ignoring your actual expressed interest or lack thereof. It's someone who cuts off all other connections, not because they've genuinely found depth, but because they're obsessively focused on winning you over. Regardless of whether you're interested, healthy interest respects your freedom and your pace. It doesn't pressure or manipulate. It doesn't manufacture crises to get your attention or play emotional games to keep you thinking about them. If someone is truly operating in godly patience, they'll demonstrate respect for your boundaries and your process. The person who's genuinely waiting for you in a healthy way isn't sitting idle, refusing to live their life. They're growing, serving, pursuing their purpose. But they're also recognizing that shallow connections feel increasingly empty because they've encountered something substantive in you. And here's what I want you to understand. This isn't about you being perfect or having it all together. This is about you being real. Real growth attracts real people. Real healing creates real connection. Real surrender to God produces real fruit that the right person will recognize. So if you're in a season where you feel overlooked or wondering if anyone truly sees your value, consider that someone might be seeing it so clearly that they've already made an internal decision. They're not playing the field anymore because they've found what they were looking for. Even if the timing isn't right yet for either of you to act on it. God's timing is rarely our timing, but His timing is always perfect, and sometimes part of His perfect plan includes someone recognizing your worth long before you even know they're paying attention. Trust that what God is building in you is not going unnoticed by the person He's preparing for you. Number 2, they protect their emotional space for something meaningful here. Something most people don't understand about emotional capacity. It's limited. You can't deeply invest in multiple people simultaneously and expect any of those connections to thrive. When someone has genuinely recognized something special in you, they may begin to protect their emotional space in ways they haven't before. This doesn't mean they become isolated or stop having friendships. It means they stop giving away pieces of their heart in directions that lead nowhere. Let me give you a realistic example. Picture a woman who's been praying for years for a godly husband. She's been on dates, she's been disappointed, she's wondered if her standards are too high. Then she encounters a man at a ministry event, someone who serves without seeking recognition, who speaks with wisdom and humility. who carries himself with quiet strength. They have a few conversations, nothing dramatic, just real talk about real things. And she notices something. She's thinking about him differently than she's thought about other men. It's not obsessive or anxious. It's peaceful but persistent. She realizes that when other men try to pursue her, she's comparing them to him, and they're coming up short. So she makes a decision, a conscious one. She's going to protect her emotional energy. She's not going to entertain connections that feel forced or empty just to avoid being alone. She's going to trust God with the timing and steward her heart well in the meantime. This is what Proverbs 4:23 means when it says, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." Guarding your heart isn't about building walls, it's about being intentional with your emotional investments. The right person recognizes that their emotional energy is valuable, and they're not going to scatter it in every direction. They're going to reserve it for what matters, and if they've identified that you matter, they're creating space for something real to develop. Even if that development takes time, here's what this might look like. Practically, a man who used to respond to every woman who showed interest now finds himself politely declining or keeping interactions surface level, not because he's rude, but because he's recognized that entertaining connections he knows won't go anywhere isn't fair to anyone involved. He'd rather wait for the possibility of something genuine with you than waste time and emotional energy on distractions. Or a woman who used to go on dates just to see what happens now finds herself more selective. She's not interested in casual hangouts with men who don't share her values or vision. She'd rather spend Friday night in worship or with friends who build her up than on another disappointing dinner with someone she knows isn't aligned with what she's looking for. And quietly, privately, she's wondering if you might be the person worth waiting for. This kind of emotional discipline is rare, but it's powerful. It reflects maturity and intentionality. It says, "I value depth over breadth, quality over quantity, and I'm willing to be patient for what's real." Now let's address the unhealthy version, because this matters. The unhealthy version of protecting emotional space is isolation that stems from fear or control. It's someone who cuts everyone off because they're terrified of vulnerability, or because they want to manipulate a situation by creating artificial scarcity. It's also someone who makes you responsible for their emotional well-being before you've even agreed to a relationship. That's not healthy waiting. That's codependency. Healthy emotional boundaries means someone is living a full life, maintaining healthy friendships and community, but simply choosing not to invest romantically in directions they know aren't right. They're not putting their life on hold for you. They're living fully while remaining open to what God might be building between you. Big difference, and here's the beautiful part. When two people who have both learned to protect their emotional space come together, the relationship has a foundation of strength. Neither person is bringing the chaos of divided affections or unresolved entanglements. They're both bringing wholeness and intentionality. That's the soil where lasting love grows. So if you're someone who's been learning to guard your heart well, who's been saying no to connections that don't align with God's best, who's been willing to sit in the discomfort of waiting rather than settling for comfort that leads nowhere, know this: the right person sees that discipline in you, and it's attractive. Not attractive in a worldly sense, but attractive in the way light attracts light. Maturity recognizes maturity. Intentionality recognizes intentionality. And somewhere, someone may be protecting their emotional space because they're hoping that space will one day be filled by you. Not in a creepy or possessive way, but in a hopeful, prayerful, trusting God kind of way. They're not demanding anything from you. They're simply being wise stewards of their own heart while leaving room for God to write a beautiful story. And that, beloved, is worth waiting for. Number 3, they're studying who you are, not just admiring what you look like. There's a profound difference between attraction and recognition. Attraction can be instant, based on physical appearance, charisma, or chemistry. Recognition takes time because it requires observation, attention, and genuine interest in who someone is beneath the surface. When someone is truly meant for you, they're not just noticing your smile or your style. They're studying your character. They're paying attention to how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. They're noticing what makes you light up, what burdens your heart, what values you refuse to compromise. Let me give you a specific example of what this looks like. Imagine you're serving in children's ministry at church. You're exhausted from a long week, but you show up anyway because you made a commitment. A man in the church notices this, not just once, but consistently over months. He sees that you're not there for recognition or applause. You're there because you genuinely love those kids and you take your commitment to God seriously. He also notices how you speak to the children with patience and creativity, even when they're difficult. He watches how you handle conflict with grace when another volunteer is critical or unhelpful. He's not staring at you in a weird way. He's simply aware, and all these observations are adding up to a picture of your character that deeply impresses him. Meanwhile, you have no idea he's paying this kind of attention. You're just being yourself, serving faithfully, doing what you believe God has called you to do. But in his heart, he's thinking, this is the kind of woman I want to build a life with. Not because you're perfect, but because your character is consistent. This is the wisdom behind 1 Samuel 16:7, which reminds us, the Lord seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. A person who's been shaped by God starts to see the way God sees. They start looking at the heart, not just the exterior. They start valuing character over charisma, substance over style. Or consider a woman who's been noticing a man in her community group. She's watched how he leads discussions with humility, always making space for others to share, even when he clearly has insight to offer. She's seen how he serves practically, setting up chairs, cleaning up without being asked, helping the single moms carry things to their cars. She's noticed that when people share prayer requests, he actually follows up later to see how they're doing. He's not flashy or trying to be the center of attention, but his consistency and servant's heart are unmistakable. And in her quiet moments, she finds herself praying, God, if this is the kind of man you have for me, I'm willing to wait for your timing. She's studying him, not in a stalkerish way, but in a wise way. She's observing whether his public faith matches his private character. She's watching to see if he's the same person in different contexts, and what she's seeing is giving her hope that maybe, just maybe, God is writing a story she doesn't fully see. Yet this kind of attention is holy. It's the opposite of shallow infatuation that fixates on surface-level traits and ignores red flags. It's the kind of attention that says, I want to know if your character can sustain a lifetime commitment. So I'm watching how you live when the cameras are off and the lights are down. Now, the unhealthy version of this is invasive surveillance or obsessive monitoring. It's someone who stalks your social media, interrogates mutual friends about your every move, or crosses boundaries to insert themselves into your life uninvited. That's not study, that's control. Healthy observation happens naturally within the context of normal community and interaction. It doesn't require sneaking or manipulation. It happens when two people exist in the same spaces and one person simply has eyes to see and ears to hear what God is doing in the other. The right person isn't trying to force their way into your life to gather information. They're simply present where they should be, faithful in their own responsibilities, and aware of what God is revealing about you in natural contexts. And here's what I need you to hear. The character you're building in private is being observed by the person God is preparing for you. The way you handle disappointment when no one's watching matters. The way you speak about people who've hurt you matters. The way you honor your commitments even when you don't feel like it. Matters. The way you pursue healing instead of numbing pain matters. All of it is painting a picture of who you are. And the right person is taking note. You don't have to perform or try to be impressive. You just have to be faithful to what God has called you to in this season, and trust that the person who's meant to see your heart will be given eyes to see it clearly. The right person won't just admire you from a distance. They'll recognize you up close. They'll see the beauty of your character, the strength of your faith, the depth of your love for God and others, and that recognition will become the foundation of something lasting. So keep being who God is, shaping you to be. Keep serving faithfully. Keep growing intentionally. Keep loving generously. Someone is watching not to judge you, but to recognize whether you're the answer to prayers they've been praying for years. And beloved, you just might be number 4. They've stopped comparing you to anyone because you've set your own standard. One of the most powerful shifts that happens in someone's heart when they encounter a person truly meant for them is this. Comparison stops making sense when you meet someone whose character, spirit, and essence resonate deeply with who you are and what you value. You don't find yourself constantly measuring them against other people. They've established their own category in your mind and heart. This isn't about pedestals or unrealistic expectations. It's about genuine appreciation for a unique combination of qualities that feel like they were specifically designed to complement your life. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Imagine a man who has a mental list of what he's looking for in a wife. Maybe he's been taught to prioritize certain traits, a specific physical type, a certain personality style, particular accomplishments. Then he meets you and something unexpected happens. You might not check every box on his original list, but there's something about you that renders the list irrelevant. The way you laugh doesn't sound like anyone else's. Laugh. The way you think about faith and life challenges him in ways he didn't know he needed. The peace he feels in your presence is different from anything he's experienced before. He finds that when friends try to set him up with other women, even women who technically fit his original criteria better, he's not interested. Not because those women aren't wonderful, but because they're not you. You've set a standard that's not about being better than everyone else. It's about being specifically, uniquely right for him. Or consider a woman who's dated various types of men, always trying to figure out which personality type or background or career path would make the best match. Then she meets a man who doesn't fit her usual pattern, but who demonstrates a consistency of character that captivates her. Maybe he's quieter than the men she usually dates, or his career path is different from what she imagined. But his integrity is unshakable. His kindness is genuine. His pursuit of God is authentic. And suddenly, the comparisons that used to fill her mind go quiet. She's not mentally stacking him up against past boyfriends or measuring him against some idealized image. She's simply recognizing that he's who she didn't know she was looking for all along. This reflects the wisdom in Song of Solomon 2:3, where it says, "As the apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among the sons." The beloved isn't comparing their love to every other possibility. They're recognizing something distinct and valuable that stands out naturally. When God brings the right people together, there's a recognition that transcends comparison because the connection itself is specific and personal. Here's what's powerful about this. When someone stops comparing you to others, they also stop trying to change you into someone else. They're not measuring you against an ex or a fantasy or a cultural ideal. They're appreciating you for who you actually are. This creates space for authentic relationship to grow because neither person is performing or pretending. The man who's stopped comparing you to other women isn't going to constantly mention what other women do or don't do. He's not going to pressure you to look like someone else, act like someone else, or be someone you're not. He's going to celebrate what makes you uniquely you. The woman who stopped comparing you to other men isn't going to keep bringing up her ex or critiquing you based on standards set by someone else. She's going to appreciate your specific strengths and work with you on growth areas without trying to fundamentally redesign who you are. This is relationship soil, where both people can flourish because they're not constantly defending their worth or proving their value. They're simply known and accepted. Now, the unhealthy version of this is someone who claims you're perfect or puts you on a pedestal so high that you can't possibly maintain it. That's not appreciation, that's idealization, and it always crashes eventually. Or it's someone who's so fixated on you that they've lost all perspective and can't see obvious incompatibilities or red flags. Healthy recognition means someone sees you clearly, including your imperfections, and chooses you anyway. It means they recognize areas where you're still growing, just like they're still growing, but they believe the core of who you are is worth building a life with. And here's what I want you to understand if you're wondering whether anyone truly sees your worth. The right person won't need you to be like everyone else. They won't need you to fit a mold or match a template. They'll recognize that what you bring is unique, and they'll value that uniqueness instead of trying to sand it down. You don't have to compete with anyone for the attention of the person God has for you. Because when that person truly sees you, comparison won't even cross their mind. You'll be enough, not because you're perfect, but because you're specifically you, and that's exactly who they've been waiting for. So stop trying to be like other people. Stop trying to mimic what you think men or women want based on social media trends or cultural messaging. Be who God is calling you to be with increasing clarity and authenticity, and trust that the person who's meant for you will recognize that authenticity as exactly what they've been praying for. That the right person isn't looking for someone who's like everyone else. They're looking for someone who's like you, and when they find you, the search stops. Not because they've settled, but because they've found exactly what they didn't even know to look for until it stood right in front of them. Number 5. They're praying for you even though they've never told you. This one is going to surprise some of you because we don't often talk about it, but it's deeply real. When someone has genuinely recognized that you might be significant in their future, prayer often becomes their first language about you. Not gossip, not anxiety, not strategizing. Prayer. They're bringing you before God consistently, asking for wisdom, asking for clarity, asking for protection over your heart and your journey. Even if they haven't yet expressed their feelings to you, this is one of the most beautiful and sacred ways someone can honor you before relationship ever becomes official. Let me paint this picture for you. There's a man who's been noticing you for months. He sees your heart for God, your consistency in the faith community, the way you navigate challenges with grace. He's attracted to you, yes, but more than that. He's drawn to your spirit, and instead of rushing to ask you out or making his interest known before he's certain of God's leading, he's praying. Every morning he's asking God, is she the one? What do you want me to know about her? How should I prepare myself to lead well if you're calling us together? What do I need to heal or grow in before I pursue her? He's praying for your walk with God, that you would continue to grow in wisdom and faith. He's praying for your protection, that God would guard your heart from wrong relationships and unnecessary pain. He's praying for clarity, that if this is not of God, the feelings would fade. But if it is, that God would make the path clear in his timing. You have no idea any of this is happening. You're going about your life wondering if anyone even sees you, while someone is faithfully interceding for you before the throne of grace. Or picture a woman who's been watching a man serve faithfully in ministry. She's impressed by his character, his humility, his genuine love for God's people. She's wondering if God might be writing a story between them. But she's not chasing or manipulating. She's praying. She's asking God to reveal his heart, to show her any areas where her perception might be idealized rather than accurate. She's praying for his leadership, his calling, his growth. She's praying that if they're meant to be together, God would work in both their hearts to prepare them, and if they're not, that God would redirect her affections and give her peace. This is the spirit of 1 Thessalonians 5:17, which simply says, "Pray without ceasing." When someone truly cares about you in a godly way, prayer becomes constant because they want God's will more than they want their own desires. They want His timing more than they want immediate gratification. They want His best for you, even if His best doesn't include them. Here's why this matters so much. Prayer changes the nature of interest from selfish to sacrificial. When someone is praying for you consistently, they're surrendering control. They're acknowledging that you belong to God first, not to them. They're inviting God into the process rather than trying to manipulate outcomes. This creates a foundation of faith that can sustain a relationship through seasons of difficulty because the relationship was born in prayer, not just passion. The man who's praying for you before pursuing you is learning to lead spiritually before he ever leads relationally. He's building the habit of bringing you to God first, which means when you eventually face challenges together, his instinct will be to pray, not panic. The woman who's praying for you before expressing interest is learning to trust God with her desires, which means she's not going to become controlling or demanding in relationship because she's already practiced surrender. Practically, this might look like someone who mentions they're praying for you when you share a struggle, not in a performative way, but in a genuine way. It might look like someone who seems to have unusual insight into your needs or timing, almost as if they've been given spiritual sight into your journey. It might look like someone whose peace about you is steady rather than anxious, because they've been bringing the relationship to God regularly and receiving His peace in return. Now, let me be clear about the unhealthy version. The unhealthy version is someone who uses prayer as a manipulation tactic, claiming God told them you're supposed to be together and pressuring you based on that claim. God doesn't violate free will or bypass mutual attraction and discernment. If someone is weaponizing prayer to manipulate your choices, that's not godly interest. That's spiritual abuse. Healthy prayer for someone you're interested in is private, humble, and surrendered. It doesn't demand outcomes or use God as a tool to get what you want. It genuinely seeks His will and trusts His answer, even if the answer is no or not yet. And here's what I want you to know. If someone is faithfully praying for you right now, God sees it. He honors that posture of surrender and faith, and He's working in both of your hearts in ways you can't see yet. You might be wondering why no one is pursuing you, why no one seems interested, while God is actually protecting you from wrong relationships and preparing someone who's taking you seriously enough to bring you before Him first. That's not delay. Beloved, that's divine strategy. The relationship that's built on a foundation of prayer has a strength that relationships built on chemistry alone can never match, because when prayer is your first language about someone, love becomes your second language, and that love is rooted in something eternal. So if you're waiting and wondering, consider that someone might be waiting and praying for your peace, your provision, your growth, your joy, praying that God would prepare both of you for a love that honors Him and blesses you both. And those prayers are not falling on deaf ears. God is listening, God is working, and God is writing a story that will be worth every moment of patient, prayerful waiting. Number 6. They're building their life in a way that could include you. One of the clearest signs that someone is seriously considering you as a potential life partner, even if they haven't said it yet, is that they start making decisions with space for another person in mind. This isn't about putting their life on hold or making you the center of their universe before a relationship even exists. It's about someone becoming increasingly intentional about building stability, character, and capacity because they're thinking about what it would take to do life well with someone they respect deeply. Let me give you some specific examples. A man who's been living in a state of perpetual unreadiness, bouncing between jobs, avoiding difficult growth work, living for the weekend, suddenly becomes more focused, not because someone's nagging him, but because he's encountered a woman whose life reflects intentionality and purpose, and it's awakened something in him. He realizes, if I want to be the kind of man who could partner well with a woman of that caliber, I need to get serious about my finances, my spiritual growth, my emotional health, my vision for the future. So he starts making changes. He creates a budget and sticks to it, not to impress anyone, but because he's thinking about being able to provide stability one day. He starts seeing a Christian counselor to work through past wounds, not because he's broken, but because he wants to be healthy enough to love well. He invests in his calling, whether that's education, business development, or ministry involvement, because he wants to build something meaningful. And all of this is happening while you're living your life, completely unaware that his vision of the future increasingly includes space for you. Or consider a woman who's been content with a small, comfortable life, but encountering a man of vision has stirred something in her. She starts thinking about what it would take to be a partner who adds value, rather than subtracting it. She starts addressing patterns that have kept her stuck. Maybe codependency, maybe people-pleasing, maybe fear of commitment. She starts building skills and community and spiritual depth, not to earn someone's love, but because she's thinking about what healthy partnership would require of her. She's asking herself, am I becoming the kind of woman who could walk alongside a man of purpose without losing myself or trying to control him? This is the practical application of Proverbs 24:27. Prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house. The wisdom here is about building a foundation before building a home. When someone recognizes that you might be part of their future, they don't just dream about it, they prepare for it. They handle their business, get their house in order, build capacity for commitment. This is especially powerful because it shows that their interest in you is inspiring them toward growth, not stagnation. Wrong people make you comfortable with mediocrity. Right people make you want to become your best self. If someone has recognized your value, and they're a person of character, that recognition will motivate them to rise to meet it. Practically, this might look like someone who asks you thoughtful questions about your future vision, not in an invasive way, but in a way that shows they're thinking about compatibility. It might look like someone who's working on the very things that would make them a good partner. Communication skills, financial responsibility, emotional intelligence, spiritual maturity. It might look like someone who's building margin in their life, time, resources, emotional bandwidth, because they're anticipating that sharing life with someone requires space. Now here's the unhealthy version. Someone who makes dramatic life changes to try to force you to notice them, or who builds their entire life around you before you've even agreed to a relationship. That's not preparation. That's pressure. Healthy building is something they're doing for themselves and for God first, with the hope that it might also bless a future relationship. It's not contingent on you saying yes. It's not a guilt trip or a manipulation tactic. It's genuine growth that would benefit them regardless of whether you ever enter the picture. And here's what you need to understand. If someone is building their life with space for you, that's one of the highest honors they can give you before a relationship even begins. They're taking you seriously. They're respecting the weight of a partnership. They're not approaching relationship as a casual experiment, but as a sacred commitment worth preparing for. So if you're wondering whether anyone sees your worth enough to invest in being ready for you, pay attention not just to words, but to patterns. Is there someone in your life who's becoming more intentional, more focused, more healthy, more purposeful? Is there someone whose growth trajectory has shifted around the same time you entered their world? That might not be coincidence. That might be someone who's quietly preparing to be worthy of the person they see in you. And beloved, that's beautiful, because the person who's willing to do the work before the reward, who's willing to build when no one's watching, who's willing to grow even without guarantees, that's the person who has the character to sustain a lifetime commitment. You don't want someone who's all talk and no Preparation. You want someone who backs up their interest with investment. And if someone is building their life in a way that could include you, even if they haven't said a word yet, pay attention. God might be preparing something you can't see yet, but He's building the foundation so that when the time comes, the house can stand strong. Number 7, they're willing to wait for God's timing. Not just their own desires. Here's something that separates genuine, godly interest from mere infatuation: the willingness to wait, not passively or resentfully, but actively and hopefully, trusting that God's timing is worth more than human urgency. When someone has truly recognized that you might be significant in God's plan for their life, they develop a different relationship with waiting. It stops being about counting days or feeling frustrated by delay. It becomes about trusting that the God who brought you into their awareness knows exactly when and how to write the rest of the story. Let me show you what this kind of patience actually looks like in real life. Imagine a man who's been noticing you for over a year. He sees your character, he's drawn to your spirit, he's prayed consistently about whether to pursue you. But every time he asks God for a green light, he senses a clear message: not yet. Maybe you're still healing from a past relationship. Maybe he's still working through his own issues. Maybe there are circumstances that need to align first. And instead of ignoring that prompting and pushing forward anyway because he's ready, he waits. He doesn't become passive or distant. He continues to be a faithful presence in community. He continues to show up where God has called him to serve. He continues to grow and build and prepare. But he's not forcing doors open. He's not manipulating circumstances to speed things up. He's trusting that the God who gave him eyes to see you will also give him wisdom to know when the timing is right to act. This is radical in a culture that teaches us to go after what we want immediately, to make things happen, to seize the day without consideration for divine timing. But this man has learned something powerful. Premature pursuit can damage what God wants to build. Rushing ahead of God's timing doesn't just risk rejection. It risks missing God's best because you settled for your good. Or consider a woman who's been drawn to a man for months. She sees his leadership, his integrity, his genuine walk with God. In a worldly sense, she could easily make her interest known. She could engineer situations to spend more time with him. She could drop hints or use social media to stay on his radar. But she's not doing any of that because she's learned to wait for God's direction, not just follow her own desires. She's praying, God, if this is from you, I trust you to make it clear in your timing. If he's the man you have for me, I trust you to move his heart and give him courage to pursue me when the time is right. And if he's not, I trust you to redirect my affections and prepare me for whoever you do have for me. That's not passivity, beloved. That's active faith. That's trusting God enough to surrender control of the timeline. This reflects the wisdom of Ecclesiastes 3:1. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. When someone truly trusts God's sovereignty, they understand that there's a season for silence and a season for speaking, a season for waiting and a season for pursuing. And the person who can discern which season they're in demonstrates a spiritual maturity that's rare and valuable. Here's why this matters so profoundly. Waiting well develops character that rushing destroys. The person who's willing to wait for God's timing is learning patience, trust, self-control, and surrender. These are the exact qualities that sustain healthy relationships through difficulty. If someone can't wait well before a relationship, they likely won't navigate well during a relationship when circumstances require patience and trust. The man who waits for God's timing before pursuing you is demonstrating that he can lead spiritually, that he values God's will over his own wants, that he's capable of delayed gratification. These are qualities that will serve you both well when you face decisions about finances, children, career moves, and countless other situations where waiting on God is necessary. The woman who waits for God's timing before expressing interest is demonstrating that she can trust rather than control, that she's secure enough in God's love to not panic when things don't move at her preferred pace, that she values His best over her right now. These are qualities that will create safety and peace in relationship rather than anxiety and manipulation. Now let's be clear about what waiting doesn't mean. Waiting doesn't mean completely avoiding interaction or pretending the person doesn't exist. It doesn't mean playing games or being intentionally distant to test their interest. It doesn't mean putting your entire life on hold and refusing to live fully while you wait for someone else to make a move. That's not godly patience. That's fear masquerading as faith. Healthy waiting means living fully, growing intentionally, serving faithfully, building purposefully, all while remaining open to God's timing for relationship. It means being present and authentic in community without forcing intimacy that hasn't been invited yet. It means stewarding the connection you do have without demanding more than what's appropriate for the current season. And here's what I need you to hear. If someone is willing to wait for God's timing regarding you, that's one of the highest compliments they could give you. It means they're taking you seriously enough to want God's full blessing, not just their own satisfaction. It means they value the relationship enough to want it built on the right foundation, in the right season, in the right way. You might be wondering why someone who seems interested hasn't made a move yet. You might be frustrated by what feels like mixed signals or slow progress. But consider this. Maybe they're not confused or disinterested. Maybe they're being obedient. Maybe they're waiting for God's green light because they respect you too much to move forward without His clear leading. And beloved, that kind of patience is worth waiting for. Because the relationship that begins in God's timing has His blessing woven into its foundation. The relationship that waits for His yes, rather than forcing a maybe, has a strength that pressure-built connections never achieve. So whether you're the one waiting or you're the one being waited for, trust the process. Trust that God sees what you can't see. Trust that His timing, though rarely our preferred timing, is always perfect. And trust that the person who's willing to wait for His direction is exactly the kind of person worth building a lifetime with. Number 8, they're becoming more like Christ because you've inspired them to take their faith seriously here. It's one of the most beautiful and often overlooked signs that someone is genuinely meant for you. Your presence in their life, even from a distance, has stirred a deeper hunger for God in them. Not because you're perfect or because you're preaching at them, but because the authenticity of your faith has awakened something in their spirit that was dormant or distracted. When God brings the right people into each other's lives, even before official relationship begins, there's often a catalytic effect. Iron sharpens iron, as Proverbs 27:17 reminds us. The right person doesn't just make you feel good, they make you want to be good. They don't just attract you to themselves, they point you toward God. Let me show you what this looks like in practical, everyday terms. There's a man who's been nominally Christian for years. He attends church sometimes. He believes the right things intellectually, but his faith hasn't really cost him anything or changed how he lives. Then he encounters you, a woman whose faith is clearly the center of her life, not in a performative or religious way, but in an authentic, integrated way. He sees how you make decisions based on prayer and principle, not just convenience and emotion. He notices how you speak about God with genuine affection, not just obligation. He watches how your faith sustains you through difficulty rather than crumbling under pressure, and something shifts in him. He starts thinking, I want what she has. I want that kind of relationship with God. I want my faith to be real like that, not just theoretical. So he starts making changes. He begins actually reading his Bible, not just carrying it. He starts attending church consistently, not just when it's convenient. He joins a men's accountability group because he realizes he needs other believers speaking into his life. He starts worship before he starts his workday. He begins serving in areas where he can make a practical difference, None of this is about impressing you, though he hopes you might notice eventually. This is about a genuine awakening that your example has sparked. You've shown him what authentic Christianity looks like, and now he can't unsee it. He can't go back to a lukewarm faith because he's tasted what it means to actually walk with God. Inspired by watching you do exactly that. Or picture a woman who's been frustrated with Christian men who talk a good game but don't actually live what they claim to believe. Then she meets a man whose faith is evidenced not by his words, but by his works. She watches him serve the elderly members of the church without anyone asking. She sees him mentoring younger guys, investing time and wisdom without expecting anything in return. She notices that he speaks about Scripture with depth and insight that only comes from actual study, not just Sunday sermons, and his example challenges her. She realizes she's been coasting spiritually, showing up but not really growing, attending but not truly engaging. His seriousness about faith makes her want to take her own relationship with God more seriously. So she starts pressing deeper. She starts a journal to document what God is teaching her. She begins memorizing Scripture instead of just reading it. She finds a mentor who can challenge and encourage her spiritual growth. She starts fasting and praying about areas where she's been stuck. Again, this isn't about earning his attention or becoming someone she's not. This is about encountering someone whose faith is contagious and finding that it's awakened a hunger in her that had been sleeping. This is the power of godly influence that 2 Corinthians 3:18 speaks about. But we all, with open face beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory. When you behold Christ in someone else, even imperfectly reflected, it changes you. It draws you toward that same glory. Here's why this sign is so significant. It reveals that the attraction isn't just physical or emotional, it's spiritual. And spiritual attraction is the only kind that can sustain a lifetime covenant. Physical attraction fades, emotional chemistry ebbs and flows. But two people who are both pursuing Christ with increasing passion and intentionality, they're being drawn toward the same center, which means they're inevitably being drawn toward each other in ways that honor God, the man who's growing in Christ, because your example inspired him, is developing the character that will serve you well in marriage. He's learning to lead spiritually, to make decisions based on eternal values, to prioritize what matters. Those early morning prayers he's learning to sustain. They'll become prayers over your marriage and your children. That scripture memory he's building, it'll become wisdom he speaks over your family in crisis. That servant's heart he's cultivating, it'll translate into sacrificial love when life gets hard. The woman who's growing in Christ, because his example challenged her, is developing the strength that will sustain partnership through every season. She's learning to find her identity in God first, which means she won't look to you to complete her or validate her. She's developing spiritual disciplines that will keep her anchored when emotions are unstable. She's building a prayer life that will cover you and your future together, even when circumstances feel overwhelming. Now, the unhealthy version of this is someone who becomes religious to manipulate you, or someone who uses spiritual language to control or pressure you. That's not inspiration, that's performance. Genuine spiritual growth inspired by another person is always directed primarily toward God, not toward impressing the person who sparked it. You can tell the difference by fruit. Genuine growth produces humility, increased love for others, greater peace, deeper joy, more patience. It makes someone more like Jesus, not just more religious. If someone's claiming spiritual growth but becoming more judgmental, more controlling, more self-righteous, that's not the Holy Spirit's work. That's flesh dressed in religious clothing. But when it's real, when someone is genuinely growing in Christ and your example played a role in sparking that growth, it's one of the most beautiful preludes to relationship that exists. Because you're not just potentially building a romance, you're building a partnership that has eternal significance. You're two people who are helping each other become who God created you to be. And here's what you need to know. The person who makes you want to love God more is a person worth keeping in your life. The person who challenges you spiritually, who inspires you to take your faith seriously, who makes you want to become more like Christ. That's someone God may be strategically placing in your path, so pay attention to who brings out the best in your spiritual life. Pay attention to who makes you want to pray more, serve more, love better, trust deeper. Pay attention to whose faith makes you hungry for more of God, because that person might just be the one God is preparing to walk beside you for the rest of your life. Both of you pointing each other toward Jesus every single day. Beloved, we've walked through these signs together, and I pray something has stirred in your spirit. Maybe you recognized someone in these descriptions. Maybe you recognized yourself. Maybe you're realizing that waiting doesn't mean you're forgotten. It means you're being prepared. Here's what I want you to remember. God sees you. He knows the desires of your heart. He knows the prayers you've prayed in secret, the tears you've cried in waiting, the moments you've wondered if anyone would ever truly see your worth. And He's writing a story that's better than anything you could orchestrate yourself. If someone is waiting for you in the ways we've discussed, trust God's timing to reveal it. Don't force, don't manipulate, don't panic. Keep becoming who God is calling you to be. Keep growing, serving, loving, trusting. The right person will recognize what God is building in you. And if you're the one waiting for someone, remember this: your patience is not wasted. Your prayers are not unheard. Your preparation is not in vain. God honors those who honor Him, and waiting well is one of the highest forms of worship. So wherever you are in your journey, whether waiting or being waited for, whether certain or still wondering, keep your eyes on Jesus, because when two people are both fixed on Him, He has a way of bringing them together in His perfect timing, in His perfect way, for His perfect purposes. Thank you for being here today. If this message spoke to your heart, let me know in the comments. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are seen, you are valued, and you are loved by the God who holds your future in His hands. Until next time, keep believing, keep trusting, and keep becoming. God is writing your story, and beloved, it's going to be beautiful.